Okay, very precise.
Good morning to our guests in the United States, and good evening to our panelists and guests in Switzerland. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome you to our webinar today. My name is Christoph Besmer. I'm the Trade Commissioner of Switzerland here on the US West Coast, and also the head of with the Swiss Business Hub, North America, United States. We serve as the representative and overseas antenna of the country's official international trade and investment promotion agency, Switzerland Global Enterprise, s-ge.com. And we do support US companies with their international expansion plans and make a business case for Switzerland in close collaboration with our colleagues from the regional and cantonal Swiss investment promotion agencies. I would like to take a brief moment to recognize and thank the organizers and partnering organizations, the leading US and Swiss-based law firms, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, and Niedercroft and Fry, respectively. I would also like to thank Laurie Doyle and Stephanie Seibold for doing all the behind the scenes work that made today's webinar possible. So the topic today is Go Global in Life Sciences, coming to Switzerland, best practices. So before we get started, a quick note about the structure of today's webinar. The formal portion of the discussion will last about 40 to 50 minutes and will be followed by a Q&A. During the presentations and the discussion, you can submit your questions in the Q&A section, and we will try to answer as many as possible. If that's not possible, we will answer via email later on. So today, I do have the distinct pleasure and chance to welcome 4 panelists that bring in an extensive amount of expertise in life sciences, both from the corporate side, companies that set up structures in Switzerland, and also from the legal side. So real briefly, I would like to welcome Oliver Peinelt. He's the Senior Vice President and Group General Counsel of Idorsia. Dr. Johannes Müller, he's the founder, chairman, and president of Berlin Tours. And Manuel Werder, he's a partner at the law firm Niedercroft and Fry, and Janine Oid-Dumont, and she's a counsel with Niedercroft and Fry. So we will look at reasons for expansion, then dive into the preparation and implementation aspect of setting up a new structure, and ask questions like, what are some best practices when it comes to navigating the local business infrastructure and position the company for a successful long-term establishment? And we will also, of course, then dive into trying to navigate the legal environment of life sciences companies in the Swiss context. So Dr. Müller will start off the discussion with an introductory presentation of what differentiates Switzerland vis-à-vis other European countries as a preferred location for life sciences companies. The floor is yours, Dr. Müller. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, at home or in your office, my name is Johannes Müller. And first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for this webinar, for inviting me to speak here briefly. Let me start with some information about my background. And I would like to give you a short hint. I have to admit that all what I tell you today, based on my personal experience, which implies that others may have made different experiences. So my background, I'm a medical doctor with more than 20 years of clinical experience in cardiac surgery and a graduate engineer in electrical engineering. So far, I founded 3 companies, all based on ideas derived from observation I have made during my clinical work. Berlin Heart, that is the first enterprise which I founded in Germany more than 15 years ago. Two of the three companies I mentioned were founded in Switzerland. Just to give you an example, when I started my clinical activity as a medical doctor, I was confronted with this situation here, which you can see here. It's probably a little bit unusual for you to look at this kind of photos, but the lady you see here was connected to a so-called cardiac support system. You see it in the background, the blue driving unit and the necessity to be supported by three persons to be able to take at least a few steps. This was for me the motivation to set up a company, the company Berlin Heart, and to first develop a mobile driving unit for this type of patients. You can see the driving unit here with patients with the same cardiac assist device, but with a mobile driving unit. This driving unit could be successfully distributed worldwide. As you can see here on a photo which was taken in Greece, many of these patients took this device. And the next step was in the company Berlin Heart, which I set up, to develop a very small so-called cardiac assist device, which is a so-called axial flow pump, which can be fully implanted in the body of the patients, in contrast what you have seen before, which was outside of the patient. And also, we developed a cardiac support system for kids and children, which made it to the first page of the weekend edition of the New York Times some years ago. That's still today the only cardiac assist device for kids and has an FDA approval. It's the only one on the market worldwide. So Berlin Heart expanded to a globally active company with 250 employees and was then sold. The next company, Foundation, then took me to Switzerland. Why to Switzerland? What are the advantages being in Switzerland? I myself went to Switzerland after trying to almost a year to find funding in Germany for an innovative medical technology idea. Depending on the area in which you want to work, there are several possibilities in Switzerland which are more or less unique and well known worldwide. My personal opinion, besides the hard facts listed here, after 6 years of experience in Switzerland, is that the mentality of the Swiss people is a very important factor that stands out from other countries. I know that's a soft fact and probably a very personal impression, but the relevance of science, which I realized in the discussion from the beginning on, convinced me. Furthermore, I found that Swiss investors are not as risk adverse like I have seen it before and act more as an entrepreneur. Due to the big pharmaceutical companies there is a huge potential of extremely well-educated people in Switzerland. For example, the ETA in Zurich has a high international reputation and is a source of many innovations worldwide. As a German, I see clear advantages in the fact that everything is concentrated in Switzerland. By this I mean that within 1 square kilometer, you can have extremely large number of specialists and contacts, which are also globally networked. Of course, this works totally different in Germany, where I have to drive at least 50 kilometers to meet someone. Accordingly, networking in Switzerland is also much easier. Preparation. Before one comes to Switzerland, you must have done, of course, all your homework as everywhere else. You shouldn't come with a half-finished business plan, and this is most likely a disadvantage of a small country with its dense networks like Switzerland, where everybody knows everyone. A bad first impression makes a round in a short time. However, and that's the positive aspect of a small country with its dense network, a first positive impression makes a round as well. According to what I know, is the success rate of startups company set up in Switzerland one of the highest worldwide. So, which of course gives room for different possibilities of interpretation. Further aspects which must be considered before set up an enterprise are listed here. Besides a proper business plan, the construct of the company is very important. Legal aspects and very early cooperation with a competent law firm, tax expert in particular in case of foreign countries, or if foreign country subsidiaries are extremely relevant to avoid in case of a successful exit, transferring most of the money to the tax office. When I founded Berlin Heels in Germany or Berlin Cures and was looking for funding to expand the company, it was extremely difficult to find the right and the reliable partner in Switzerland. I was a little bit lucky enough to have my daughter call my attention to a young guy, Marco Bargerich. He offered me to structure, finance, support the company in Switzerland. He did not want money, but a mandate that would assure him in an active role in the company if he was successful. So I thought myself, well, in principle, it costs me nothing, and if he can do it, then he should do it. Now, after 6 years, I can say it was a wise decision. We are quite successful. So, what I want to say here at my final thoughts, as a foreigner like me, as a German, it is not directly clear where I should contact whom with an innovation in Switzerland. Maybe this is something which become more transparent over time, and at least I would like to see this happen in Switzerland very soon. I think thanks a lot. I should end my presentation here, and I'm open, of course, for discussions and questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Müller. Now that we touched on some of the reasons for expansions and some of the advantages of Switzerland, let's jump to the preparation phase. And Oliver, maybe you can get started and just introduce yourself a little bit and Idorsia, and then maybe we can look at the question, what should companies consider before making the decision to grow overseas or to grow abroad and to come to Switzerland?
Yeah, maybe a few words on myself. I'm Oliver Peinelt. I'm a Swiss born. I'm a lawyer, also qualified lawyer with an admission to the bar here in Switzerland. I started my pharmaceutical career actually in Actelion in 2007. And it ended in 10 years later when Actelion was bought by J&J for $30 billion US. And it was at this time the biggest transaction ever in Switzerland for a pharmaceutical company. And it was not only the biggest one, it was also, I would say, the most interesting one, because a part of this transaction was actually that Idorsia was being founded. It was what Jean-Paul, our CEO, wanted was not just, making money, but actually opening a new opportunity for the shareholders. And as a matter of fact, Idorsia was incorporated as a spin-off in that regard from Actelion, where Idorsia received all the early pipeline projects. 3 years later, now we can say that we are on the verge of being successful. We have currently 4 compounds in phase 3. We have 13 compounds in various stages in the pipeline. We have gone through certain capital increases in the past, which were very successful, I have to say. And I mean, it's a good example, actually, what is important when somebody thinks of coming to Switzerland. It's mainly, in my view, when you want to consider coming to Switzerland or to Europe, you have to ask yourself, what do you want to do? Because when you just say, I want to have a small office in Europe, in Switzerland, to be honest, you can go wherever you want to go. However, when you want to have, I would say, a company which needs some larger funding, I think Switzerland has very good opportunities here. And as Mr. Müller said in his presentation, the investors here in our view, and we have seen that in the last capital raises we have done, the investors are actually very interested in investing in the pharmaceutical companies here. And I am not aware that this is the case anywhere else at this point in time, I have to say. So first thing I think is you have to decide on yourself, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to do here when you're coming to Europe? What we, of course, are also doing as a company, we are also opening branches all over the world too, in order to be able to serve the markets with our new drugs. However, the idea of being here in Switzerland is mainly driven by the fact that Switzerland is, and I can say that really is, a pharmaceutical center, a gravitational center in the world. You have within 250 kilometers, you have these large pharmaceutical companies. You also have these tons of startups. I think when you are in a pharmaceutical company and you want to, at least have a business hub or something, come here. You won't find anywhere else this large selection of experts in the pharmaceutical realm, I would say. So first of all, consider what you want to do. When you want to make it big, I would say come to Switzerland. It makes most sense.
Are there any specific research steps you would say, kind of a checklist that you would recommend for companies to go through? Is there something like that, like a blueprint?
Yeah, Christoph, I think it's not so much different also, as Mr. Müller said, as when you ever want to go to another country. I think the main driver is really the access to resources. The resources in terms of human resources, in terms of what the infrastructure is. Switzerland, for example, has 2 fully international airports here, intercontinental airports. Basel, where I'm sitting right now, is kind of a mid-size airport. So we have access really to all the important cities and countries in the world from here. That's one thing. And also, to be honest, one of the most important things nowadays are, of course, the taxes. And as you probably also know, Switzerland has made a great leap forward by adapting its tax structure to the OECD guidelines right now. So any investors must be also aware that investments here in Switzerland are very predictable in terms of tax, the tax burden that one would have to pay. Plus, maybe also when you are doing a checklist, when you're talking about human resources, people that you need in your office. I mean, it is also no secret that certain cities in Switzerland are very high ranking in these famous lists of the most, how's the word in English, of the most livable cities in the world. And it's not only that also which gives a certain benefit that you have here this really landscape, this really nice landscape here in Switzerland, but you also have a high competition tax-wise for natural persons when it comes on income taxes, which in my view we also do not have in such a small area of 250 kilometers distance here, that you can actually vary your income taxes by almost 50% here. It's amazing what you can do here. So do the check that you usually do: human resources, availability of funds, of money, infrastructure, attractivity for people to live here. And I think it's practically a normal outcome that you would say Switzerland is at least one of these countries which are interesting here. Also, by the way, when you're talking about funding business, funding in terms of also how much time you need for that, we are quite fast, I have to say. You know, when we wanted to do a merger lately, a few months ago, this was a very fast enterprise actually, which requires, of course, certain corporate actions, and that was an extremely fast timeline that we were able to procure here. Also, when we want to do a new company, it's very fast here. I do not think that it takes longer than 4 to 5 days to really come up with a company here which is well funded, not just an office. So do the normal stuff that you usually do.
That's good. Thank you. When we look at the actual implementation phase of setting up a company, and maybe you can put yourself in the shoes of a potential investor that wants to set up in Switzerland but doesn't really have the Swiss background, that the network, how important is it to have a clear battle plan, to have access to local resources, and if you don't have those connections, how can you go about getting there? And what would you recommend to a new investor to get started there?
Well, of course, I would say turn to Christoph because he knows exactly how Switzerland is working. But I mean, it's again, I have maybe recourse a little bit here back. It's despite the fact that Switzerland is a small country, you have so much variety here. So what you don't want is, when you're a pharmaceutical company, you don't want to end up somewhere on the top of a mountain in the Alps. That's not what you want. You want to immerse yourself in a city where you have a lot of resources, a lot of competition also between the people, because that is spurring innovation. So you have to ask yourself, where do I want to set up my company? And when you're thinking of that, where should I do that? The best way currently, in my view, is really to go to Christoph, because Christoph can connect you later on then also with his counterpart in the cantons, which can tell you, for example, come to Basel if you are more in the compound-based pharmaceutical industry. When you're, for example, a little bit more in the medical device industry as Mr. Müller, maybe it would be worthwhile to go into the Geneva area. It really depends on what you want to do, but the people like Christoph can, of course, help you here a lot on to decide what to do. And second step is, of course, finding offices and all that stuff. Finding offices, in my view, is not so easy. We even have also a problem here, I would say, because space in Switzerland is scarce. That's a fact. Nobody can deny that. And if you want to, I have to swing here a little bit my arm, otherwise the lamp is turning off. If you want to do that, an important fact that you could do is ask this real estate agencies to help you finding spaces for that, for your office. That's the second thing that I would do. And the third thing, which is actually going hand in hand with that part, is talking to a local lawyer here to decide on what makes sense in terms of building up the corporate structure. The corporate structure is deciding at the end on how much taxes you pay, on where you pay your taxes at the end. And that's, I would say, this kind of a trinity that you need. You need these people from Christoph, you need the real estate people, and you need the lawyers in order to make it happen what you want to happen. In my view.
Thank you. Now we talked about the ecosystem in Switzerland and the strong presence and the very presence of life science companies in Switzerland, very good environment for companies to set up. But now also the question is, now we're talking about growth, right? So how do you see the overall environment in Switzerland for growth opportunities for companies, and potentially also some challenges, and because business expansion and so forth is of course also on the forefront, right, of any company. So we want to be successful. Sure. What are some of the key ingredients there that are necessary, and they're hopefully also available for a company like yours or others to grow and to expand and be successful?
Well, what you have to keep in mind is that Switzerland itself is a small country in terms of market. We have nowadays about 10 million people here, which is not much, I have to say. It's really a small population here. And from Magdalion times, I knew at this time that, for example, the global turnover, only 2% were made here in Switzerland. So I would rather not say that Switzerland per se is an interesting market. It's rather interesting in terms of growth opportunity that a company could have the headquarters here, or a distribution basis, or whatever. Because when I see also on what tensions are growing over the world between the blocks, the political blocks, or whatever, I think it's a big advantage that Switzerland's still a neutral country. We try really to treat everybody safe. Switzerland has centuries of experience in working with other countries, in trading, in trading treaties. This is I think the big thing when you consider maybe expanding your business here in Europe. With Switzerland, the basis here is ideal for that, to do that. The people in Switzerland are multilingual. Most people here are speaking 2-3 languages. We had in the last, I guess, 5 or 6 years, a big influx of people from all other European countries. My team, for example, consists of people from Poland, from Slovakia, from Bulgaria, France, Germany, even Italy. It is amazing, what you can do with these people, because they give you flavor, they give you the knowledge of what they have done in their country in order to make your actions here, your endeavors, being a success in the other countries, because they can really tell you what you need to do to, for example, ship your stuff over the borders, to comply with the other rules in the other countries. That's what they can do here. So I think the business opportunity, the business growth opportunity that Switzerland can offer is really this unique, century-grown connections to other countries. And it's really not, this is not joke, really, when you think of it. I mean, the Alps were always kind of a border between the north and the south of Europe. But in the center of Switzerland, even there, the the people they were used, to these people who were crossing the Alps and were able to deal with them at this point in time. So this is kind of the DNA of Switzerland, is international trading. And that's the growth opportunity if somebody comes here. It's really in our DNA.
Now, touched on a lot of positive aspects of doing business in Switzerland, but of course there's always the other side. I mean, were there in your case any stumbling blocks, challenges when it came to commercialization, or from peer companies or colleagues that you heard of, things that one needs to be careful about and need to get the right information early on?
Sure. I think the problem is not, at least for the pharmaceutical industry, I think it's not so imminent, because the pharmaceutical industry has always been adapted to the fact that, for example, when you want to sell a product in the US, FDA inspectors are coming to your premises. They want to see on how you conducted the studies. They want to see on how you produced the API, the product at the end. That's nothing new for us. And Switzerland has always offered enough possibilities that these inspections can be made. However, I know for other industries it's not that easy. Since we are not a full member of the EU, there are of course certain hinderings in terms of that it is not so easy sometimes to get the necessary paperwork for importing stuff into the EU. But it is possible, and again, I have to say, for the pharmaceutical industry, I don't see any hindering blocks at all. After Switzerland has adopted also the free movement of European citizens, by the way, I have to say, it went even easier, for example, to get access to the human resources, to the specialists, to the best-in-class people that you need to have when you want to develop a good pharmaceutical product. Actually, I have to say it got even easier than in the past. I don't see any stumbling block. Maybe there's one little detail. I was talking today over with our counsel in the US. One particular thing compared to the US is, for example, the problem when you're founding a company with a going concern. The going concern is something which is important in the US only, according to my understanding at least, when you're having a listed company which is listed under the governance of the SEC. This going concern, however, is something which is applicable here in Switzerland to all the companies which have a share capital. And I think this can be some kind of a hurdle for certain companies, because the bigger your company gets, the more funding you need in order to be safe on this going concern side. But I think this is not so much special for Switzerland, but more or less something which is coming, I guess, even a little bit from the Roman law. So this is something which is we find to a certain extent all over Europe. It's not so special, but I think it's a big difference to what our American colleagues experience in their home territory. Of course, that's kind of a stumbling block I see sometimes. But this really need for lots of cash at the end.
Great, thank you so much, Oliver. Let's now try to navigate the legal environment and do a little bit of a deep dive there, and maybe get started with Manuel of Niederkraft and Frey. Maybe you can also introduce yourself real quick, and also talk about your law firm, what your key areas of expertise are. And then an interesting question that comes up frequently is how do you see the latest trends in mergers and acquisitions, broadly speaking, in life sciences, and then particularly when it comes to Switzerland?
Thank you very much, Christoph. My name is Manuel Werder. I'm a partner at Niederkraft Frey. I'm mainly focused on corporate law and M&A transactions. And I will speak about the legal aspects on the corporate side and M&A side. Like many other markets, the Swiss M&A market has also been affected by the COVID-19 crisis. According to a study from one of the big four accounting firms, there was a decrease of about 42% in inbound transactions targeting Swiss small and medium enterprises, and a 24% reduction in outbound transactions by Swiss small and medium enterprises during the first half of 2020 compared to the first half of 2019. While the domestic volume of domestic transactions remained stable. Now, the life science and pharmaceutical industries, as well as IT, TMT sectors, they were least affected by the crisis and made the largest contributions to the remaining volume. We also saw the lowest impacts on valuations in these sectors. In general, the valuation of companies has become more difficult because we have many extraordinary impacts, such as the closure of businesses, short-time work, governmental aids, etc. And buyers in general have become more cautious. As a result, deal certainty has decreased. MAC clauses have been introduced more often, and we also see significantly more earn-out structures than in the past years. Also, it has become more difficult to leverage the purchase price because also the banks have become more cautious. Therefore, we see more alternative financing structures such as vendor loans or staggered transfers split up in various tranches. Thanks to the governmental aids, we have not seen yet many distressed asset deals or fire sales, but we expect this in the short future because the government is now more hesitant to support a broad range of businesses than it used to be during the first wave in the spring of this year. These are by and large the latest trends in M&A.
Okay, thank you. When we go a little bit deeper and actually look at some of the legal developments in mergers and acquisitions, corporate finance, even relocation matters, broadly speaking, do you have anything you could share with the audience on this topic?
Sure, thank you. I would like to mention two topics. First, until today, Switzerland does not have any general foreign investment regime on the basis of national interests and regardless of the industry sector. In other words, Switzerland is still very open and liberal towards foreign investment and relocation. There are many trends. There are certain trends in a very early stage to potentially introduce such restrictions. The Swiss Parliament has made a motion to the Swiss government to make a respective proposal similar to what we have seen in the European Union and other countries. Whereas these restrictions, they are, when you look between the lines, they are largely targeted against Chinese state-owned enterprises. What we have is there are a few sector-specific foreign investment control restrictions applying to M&A transactions involving Swiss target companies, in particular in the finance sector, also health services and products, as well as specific professions. Also, Switzerland has in place law from the 80s restricting non-residents to purchase enterprises that own residential real estate in their portfolio or that have significant unused land reserves, which is probably a peculiarity of Switzerland. The second topic I would like to mention is that Swiss corporate law has been under revision for more than 12 years now. And now in June of this year, the Swiss Parliament has finally adopted the revised law. Some of the new provisions will enter into force on January 1st, 2021, the remainder in 2022. And the new law will certainly have an impact on foreign investment. For example, Shareholders meetings may henceforth be held outside Switzerland or simultaneously at various venues via electronic means or in writing by way of circular resolutions. The rules on capital structure will become more flexible. Then guidelines on gender representation at board and senior executive level in major listed companies will be introduced. The new law also implements a temporary ordinance that we had in place against so-called excessive remuneration in listed stock corporation. The law foresees a limitation on sign-on bonuses, shareholder votes on the remuneration for top managers, and some further items. The new law also contains further reforms to corporate restructuring. It aims to create incentives for companies to take necessary actions at an early stage and thus avoid insolvency. This was the overview on the latest legal developments in corporate and M&A.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Manuel. Before we jump to Janine, I would like to invite anybody who has a question to our distinguished panel. Now would be a good time to type it under new question, and then after we close this discussion, we can start with. Janine, maybe you can also introduce yourself briefly, what your background is and legal background, and then maybe we can talk about the regulatory environment and what is important for companies to consider, especially when it comes to companies in the life sciences sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Christoph. Yes, as a short introduction, I'm a counsel with Niederer Klapp & Frey, and I'm specializing in particular in regulatory and compliance matters in the life science and healthcare sectors or fields. Next to that, I also do a lot of distribution and also product liability matters land from time to time on my table. So what is important? You asked me about the regulatory and environment here in Switzerland. If someone wants to establish a company here, what should be considered? I think it's fair to say that Switzerland has a rather moderate level of regulation. And as we have heard from the other speakers, it's a very innovative country, so it's also very R&D friendly. And there are fast tracks, for instance, available for approval of innovative medicines that provide for a high therapeutic benefit. Also, I think it's important to mention that Swissmedic, which is the Swiss Agency for Therapeutic Products, is probably is on par with the fastest authorities, let's say with the FDA and the European Medicines Agency as well when it comes to authorizations and the granting of the same. And because Switzerland is such a small country, Swissmedic is really also the regulator that is probably most accessible, because you can really pick up the phone and or write them an email and get an answer on your regulatory or compliance questions in a rather short time. And another thing I would like to mention that was also mentioned by Oliver Peinelt is the different languages we have in Switzerland. We have 3 official languages, which are German, French, and Italian. And also this should always be borne in mind when wanting to come to Switzerland, because all the patient information, for instance, or the package leaflets usually need to be drafted in all 3 languages. But what is also very, very useful is that usually the information provided, for instance, on Swissmedic's website or the different forms that are available online, they often are provided also in English. So that makes navigation for non-German, French, or Italian-speaking people a lot easier. Maybe another a few words.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Maybe another few words just on the most important regulations of concern, probably for pharma. I would say it's what companies should be aware that they need an establishment license, and not only if they do manufacturing, wholesale, import or export, but also if they are established in Switzerland and only trade in foreign countries. This is something that is not very familiar to all other countries outside of Switzerland. Then, of course, you need the marketing authorization for each product. Here, Swissmedic will assess quality, safety, and effectiveness of the product. And also of concern are always pricing and reimbursement. And in this regard, it is important to know that Switzerland has a so-called insurance model where with a mandatory healthcare insurance that every Swiss resident has to have. And this mandatory health insurance does reimburse quite a lot of pharmaceuticals that are on this certain list called the list of pharmaceutical specialties. And it is the Federal Office of Public Health who determines which products will be admitted to this list. And as a last point for medtech companies, the regulation is very similar as in the EU. We will also now adapt our regulation to the new MDR that come into force in the EU in May next year. That was postponed because of COVID for 1 more year. And yeah, there it is really a self-regulation regime with certain products that the manufacturer can certify himself, and for other products of other classifications that need also a notified body who certifies the product.
Thank you, Janine. There is, of course, also another very important aspect when it comes to the overall legal environment, and that's dreaded also by many managers and so forth, and that's where legal expertise comes in, and it's the C word, the compliance word. Maybe you can say a few words about the importance of compliance and some trends, and what you would share with the group on this topic.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think you put it quite right. It's the C word. Usually no one wants to hear, but I come to that aspect a bit later. It is, of course, important, and I think always one has to have compliance in mind. In particular, the interactions of pharmaceutical companies, recently more and more also of medtech companies with healthcare providers, are really scrutinized by regulators, legislators, and the media. It was the case in the past years, and I guess this will go on also in the future. But I would like to say that for me, or in my experience, compliance must not only or always be a bad thing. It can also really be an asset. And I've really made this experience when I was seconded as a compliance officer for a pharmaceutical company here in Switzerland. Because if you really care for compliance, it can really be an economic advantage, because you show really to have ethical values, and it can really, in particular for globally operating companies, it can be a competitive advantage if you take that seriously and if you also talk about it. The most important regulations with regard to compliance to mention with regard to Swiss law are probably the integrity and transparency provisions. They have also been just recently revised and newly introduced as of 1st January this year. With regard to integrity, it's all about the undue advantages provided by companies, pharmaceutical companies, to healthcare providers and healthcare organizations. There are certainly certain exceptions, for instance, for research or grants for research, education, and training. And important to know is that these integrity provisions will in the near future also become applicable to medtech companies. So their compliance will be really of the essence. And the transparency provisions, they already apply since this year to both pharmaceutical and medtech companies. And here, key is really that all discounts and rebates granted by these companies are shown on all receipts and accounts of both the one granting the rebate and the one receiving the rebate, and the respective accounts must also be open up to the authorities if requested. Two other compliance topics that always pop up is one of is pharma advertising. There, companies should also really take care to be compliant, because there are quite strict rules on how you are allowed to advertise your product and by which means. For instance, there is a general prohibition to advertise prescription-only medicines to the general public. And also a topic that always comes up more and more is data protection. This is in particular also as Switzerland will adapt its data protection laws to the EU laws, to the GDPR. So also this will become more strict in the near future.
Okay, thank you, Janine. Maybe as a last question, what should companies that seek to expand to Switzerland know about the Swiss healthcare economy as a whole, broadly speaking, on a macroeconomic level?
Yeah, in this respect, I think I've already talked about the mandatory health insurance, which is very important, as well as the other social insurances. So Switzerland has a very high quality healthcare economy, but also a very complex one, because there are regulations on federal level, on cantonal level, and even on communal level in certain respects. And it has, as was already mentioned by Mr. Müller, it has also a very dense network of healthcare providers. And these providers are public and private, so this makes it also, again, a bit complex. But yeah, I think the most important thing to know for companies is about this insurance model, and that several medicines and also medical devices are reimbursed to a large part by the mandatory health insurance and must not be paid by the residents themselves, because every resident has to mandatorily have this insurance.
Okay, great. Thank you, Janine. Now I would like to ask a couple of questions. Again, the audience, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A section. Maybe we can get started with a question to both Dr. Müller and Oliver Peinelt. In a nutshell, when you set up the structure in Switzerland, what was your biggest surprise? Something you did not expect? Could be a stumbling block, or could be something positive that you experienced that you really like, wow, I wasn't really aware of that happened.
May I answer?
Yes, please.
Yes, okay. No, when I came first to Switzerland, I was extremely surprised that the people I was talking to, mainly specialists in the field of medicine, of course, they were very open for new developments. To be honest, that's in contrast what I have seen I'm sorry to say that in Germany, where you usually get as a first reply to an innovation, that's something is not new enough and that's will not work, and so it's totally different in Switzerland. So they gave me the impression, oh, it's very interesting, let's try out, let's see what is behind that. and that made it very easy to come in contact and to build relations and to start trials and to bring things forward.
What I sometimes I am surprised positively is the positivity of the administration. And Janine, you were alluding to that. For example, when it comes down to tax ruling, it's very efficient here. You can really call up the tax authorities. You can even negotiate with them what makes sense to a certain extent. We even can talk to the community here when it comes down to maybe trying to realize a building project. The authorities, I must say, are very helpful. They seem to display an interest to make your business thriving. That's what surprises me after all these years still again.
I can maybe add a little anecdote. I was working maybe 15 years ago in a New York law firm, and I was asked a question about Swiss law. And I didn't know the answer and sent an email to the competent governmental authorities. And then when the partner asked what I did, and I told him that, he was laughing and said, and he asked me whether I believe I would get an answer before the end of the year. But within a week, I did have an answer.
That's good. When it comes to U.S. companies, and we do have a couple of representatives, U.S. companies in the audience, the question arises, and this question is from John oftentimes, and just want to read his question. We are aware that some canton cities provide incentives for companies, which could include abated facility costs or other incentives grants. What is the status of those programs? How are they funded, and how are they treated in Swiss tax law? So, John, first of all, you can get in touch with me directly. We can talk about what would be available, what kind of opportunities are available, both on a federal and a cantonal level. But maybe to the panel here, what is your experience in working with the Swiss cantons, the Swiss federal government, and the support for U.S. companies, and how complex or easy is it to navigate Swiss tax law and different programs?
Maybe I just start a little quickly, not being a US company here, but in my view, the Swiss tax law is comprehensive. It's not as complicated as most other tax laws I have seen in my career so far, I have to say. With regard to the programs, I really have to defer here maybe to Manuel or to you, Christoph. I'm not aware of any things that are available. What I can say is, when we were incorporating Idorsia, we were not recoursing to these kind of tax abates or whatever, because we actually had already funding. So the fact that we had this demerger agreement with J&J, so there was no need actually that we would go for anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not a tax lawyer, I'm a corporate lawyer, but I shall be happy to take this question up with our tax colleagues and get back to John via email.
Okay. Now we have about 2 minutes left, and if I may, I would like to just throw out one last question to the round. When we look at, we covered so much ground in this last hour, and thank you so much, everybody, for partaking and sharing your expertise with the audience. When we look at this whole process, who would be your key people outside of the company that you would like to have in a boat? Couple of experts, people that you think this is necessary. We need those to create a successful launch.
I think for me, what I would need first is really somebody who is immersed here in the industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, somebody who has experience, like, for example, Mr. Müller, somebody who really knows how it is working here and who actually are the experts then to contact to. That's how I see it.
Okay, great. We're right on time. We got 60 minutes. This is perfect. To thank very much, to express my sincere thanks also in the name of all the organizers of today's webinars, to Dr. Johannes Müller, Oliver Peinold, Manuel Werder, and Janine Reuth-Demont. We are all available going forward for any questions you have, or any further support you need, and connections you might be interested in. And so I would like to thank everybody, to the audience, for partaking, and have a great rest of Wednesday evening in Switzerland, and Wednesday morning or early afternoon in the United States. So I close your here, and thank you so much, everybody, and have a great day. Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.